So this video is supposed to be about how violent and dangerous Cal has become in Jedi Survivor, especially when compared to Fallen Order. But I think the most dangerous thing about Cal is his new mullet. Do you guys remember when Jedi Fallen Order released, there was so much talk about dismemberment and why the game didn't have it? After I got to play Jedi Survivor at a recent event in LA for about 3 hours, I have to say this game is so much more violent. Why were the developers allowed to make this one more violent than Fallen Order, considering it's pretty much the same game? Today, what I'm going to do is compare the new Star Wars Jedi Survivor gameplay to Fallen Order to show you just how much more fluid and dynamic combat feels and how brutal the game is. Because that was honestly one of the big things that stood out to me during my 3 hours of playing it. There were multiple times where I'd perform a series of attacks and then gasp at what I'd just done to some poor stormtrooper who's probably trying to feed a wife and kids living at home. Also, I'm going to talk about dismemberment and how it works in this game. It happens way more often than you'd think. Hey everyone, it's Andrew. So during my time with the game in LA, I was lucky enough to get to talk to some of the developers. I did some interviews. And one of the main questions I had for them was how they approached dismemberment in this game and what the approval process was like about putting it in this game. I think everyone kind of knows it's obviously something they wanted to do for the first game, have human dismemberment, have stormtroopers' limbs go flying all over the place, but they were limited by both Lucasfilm, by Disney, and by trying to keep this thing somewhat family friendly. They even said to me they really wanted to do it for the first game, but it was almost one of those things where this was a new Star Wars game, it was a new product, and I think Disney, EA, Lucasfilm didn't really know how it was going to be received. Because of the popularity of Fallen Order, how well that game did, how respected and loved that game is, I think it gave the developers a bit more leeway with getting approvals for such things as dismemberment of stormtroopers, which, like I said, happens a lot more often than you would think. Half the time playing the game, I'd be performing a series of combos, attacks, using each of the 3 stances I got to play with, the single, double, and dual wield. And let's say I was fighting a group of 5 scout troopers. I reckon at least 2 or 3 of the scout troopers I killed would have a limb go flying. Back for Fallen Order, Brandon Kelch, one of the lead designers, how you going, man? Nice to meet you, said that when it came to dismemberment, they used the films as reference. And working with Disney, it's like you have to use it for powerful moments, for moments that drive the story and the plot, which is what happens in Star Wars. Most of the people who get dismembered at some point is during a story moment. It's not just a random stormtrooper being sliced up. It's usually something like Luke gets his hand cut off by Darth Vader, which then inevitably forces him to get a mechanical hand so that he's more like his father than he first thought. It's a huge story-driven plot moment, and that was their approach to doing this in Fallen Order. With Jedi Survivor, however, they wanted to make lightsabers feel like lightsabers, more like the lightsabers we became so used to seeing in the prequels, and not the baseball bat versions of the sequels. When talking to the devs last week, they said the only real concern for putting dismemberment more frequently in Jedi Survivor was keeping the game's teen rating. As long as they could maintain that, then Lucasfilm were okay with it. So how do you do that? Well, it generally comes down to blood and gore. Lightsabers have been known to cauterize wounds because of the high temperature of the blade when slicing through. It's very rare that we've seen blood actually appear in Star Wars following a lightsaber wound. I think I can remember only 2 times, one being Ponda Baba's arm in the cantina, and then Obi-Wan's wounds in his fight against Count Dooku in Attack of the Clones. And I think this is how the developers approached lightsabers in Fallen Order. Every time you'd slice through something, whether it be a stormtrooper or another enemy or even a wall, the blade would leave burn marks. And in Jedi Survivor, those burn marks look even more brutal and painful than in the first game. It might be subtle, but they've definitely increased the amount of burn on the wounds. We also need to talk about the finishes in Jedi Survivor, because when compared to Fallen Order, they've taken it to another level. In a lot of ways, I think you can argue that Fallen Order's finishes can be quite brutal, especially some of the ones where Cal takes his lightsaber and slams it through a stormtrooper's chest. However, Jedi Survivor is also about Cal developing as a character and as a Jedi in this dark time following Order 66. And I think his combat moves, abilities, and finishes in this game reflect this. He has to take desperate measures and be more violent in order to survive, and we're seeing this reflected in his combat. Even when it comes to dismantling droids, slicing droids to pieces, I think you can argue Cal is way more violent than he was in the first game. And sure, that is also just the developers having the groundwork laid in Fallen Order from which they're able to expand on for Jedi Survivor, add more finishes, add more moves to the game, add more combat. But at the same time, this is also part of Cal's character development. Also, when it comes to facing the beasts and creatures you encounter in Jedi Survivor, there are more opportunities to perform brutal finishes than there were in the first game. Even though there were times in Fallen Order where you could take down a creature by slicing off potentially its head or its leg, Survivor once again has taken this to another level, allowing you to cut the arm off this jungle wampa. But honestly, the main reason I wanted to talk about this was because of the Rancor. And this isn't about the finisher you can perform on the Rancor, it's about the finisher the Rancor performs on you. The Rancor will pick Cal up by the hand and bite into him with its giant teeth. You can literally see Cal's leg breaking and twisting out of place in this animation as his face looks like it's in excruciating pain. The first game had nothing like this, and I'm not going to be surprised if there are other enemies that can do something similar to this. Now, I think it's also cool to compare the violence and combat in Jedi Survivor to previous Star Wars games which featured dismemberment. This is nothing like Jedi Outcast, which went completely all out and is possibly the most violent, brutal Star Wars game ever created. And it's also not really like The Force Unleashed 2, where you're playing as a ridiculously overpowered character who's capable of decimating dozens of stormtroopers at a time. I think it's fair to say both Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor have taken inspiration from a lot of these older games, even some of the lightsaber combat in the Revenge of the Sith game. But honestly, after having spent time with the game hands-on, I think it's fair to say the combat in this game is going to satisfy you in ways Fallen Order didn't. So what do you think of the violence in this game? And is it what you're looking for? Are you still hoping to see more? Let me know in the comments. Also, if you want to see more of a breakdown of everything new in Jedi Survivor, then watch this video here. And thank you for watching this. My name's Andrew. I'll catch you soon.